Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Facing Our Future. I'm your host, Angus McKelvey, and today we have another episode of Innovation, Challenges, and Opportunities Facing Our Future in Hawaii. One of the things facing our future in Hawaii is technology, the innovation economy, and how do we join this worldwide movement and turn what is an advantage for Hawaii into an economic engine that is sustainable beyond what we have. And for that conversation, I'm happy to be joined by Robbie Melton, the High Technology Development Corporation. Aloha, welcome, thanks for being here.
Mahalo for having me.
High Technology Development Corporation, I gotta say, you're not based out of Colorado, right? No, but for the person on the street, you know, what exactly is it you do? How long has the organization been around? And what makes it stand out among other governmental entities or, you know, initiatives that are going on right now?
So we're actually a state agency attached to the Department of Business and Economic Development, and we've been around since the early 80s. So back when I got out of grad school, that's when the High Technology Development Corporation was actually formed, and our original incubator was up in Mililani. And so our charge is really to support all the tech industry. And our name right now says high tech, which is a little misnomer because we do things like agrotechnology, space, engineering technology, software, app development, everything.
Well, given the name is almost as old as Devo, do you think it's a time to like maybe, you know, to change the name, to come up with a name that's more descriptive of what you're engaged in today in the 21st century?
Well, that's one of our goals going into the legislature this coming session is we'd like to have our name changed to the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. And by doing that, that removes the high in the technology so that it broadens our scope because now, although technology is an industry, technology is in everything. You know, everything you do when you go to the store and you check out, that's all digital, that's all technology. You know, even the way clothes are made, now there's new technology in those clothing. So lots of innovation, creation. So it is time to upgrade our name.
So yeah, you have high technology, and this is back in the day when, you know, you had an analog world, you know, and high technology was truly that digital, select, probably defense contract space. But now if it's Hawaii technology, it's about technology in Hawaii. Are there any, you know, within that space of Hawaii technology, are there any companies or entities that are coming forward that are not only part of an innovation economy, but are working with technologies that could be a game changer around the world? Is there any types of, in other words, is a technology effort in Hawaii geared not only towards economic development, but also in trying to find and matriculate new actual technologies?
Well, I mean, there's so many different ones. I don't even know.
Both sides of paper if necessary.
Yeah. give me 5 hours to tell you about. We have so many great technologies out there. One of our own programs is the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Center that we have called HCAT, and that's a joint project with private industry and the Air Force to develop new hydrogen fuel cell technology for transportation.
Do they have anything going on, any pilots in the Oahu area?
Oh
yeah,
right now? we have several pilots. We just developed a Humvee, you know, hydrogen fuel cell, tour buses, hydrogen fuel cell, looking at all different types of transportation vehicles that are now being outfitted with hydrogen fuel cell. We actually have a pumping station up in the Hickam Pearl Air Force Base. There's one up at Schofield Barracks. There's going to be one in Big Island soon.
Oh, okay.
So it's really a growing technology.
And how do you power the fuel cells? Are they using any type of, you know, like for instance, I believe in one pilot they were looking at renewable energy or PV as a way to...
Well, this is hydrogen.
Okay.
So that's how they're fueling it. So there's all this very complicated technology
Yes,
that you and
true.
I will never understand.
True.
So I can only talk, you know, very briefly about how it all works, but it's a new way of using water to fuel the transportation instead of using, you know, the gasoline, the petroleum that we use.
Yeah.
So it's a whole new game changer. It's better than the batteries from, you know, electric vehicles because that takes away from some of our important electricity, which you know is very expensive.
Yes,
here.
definitely. Well, I actually got a chance to drive one of those cars myself on a test demonstration. I got to tell you, much more juice in it than a Prius any day.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I don't think you expect. You put the gas and boom, and you take off
Wow.
like Starsky and Hutch or something.
Yeah.
You know? But you know, one of the things, and it's interesting that you bring up, you know, fuel. You know, in Hawaii, that's been a challenge. It's been seen as one of the not volatile things in doing business, but also kind of a, you know, on the technology front, it presents a certain hindrance. Is there efforts going on within the High Technology Development Corporation to look specifically at areas where technologies in renewables could be deployed to perhaps be able to, like the hydrogen fuel cell, have more types of renewables come online, or types of technologies to be able to better utilize renewables or other types of energies in Hawaii? Is there anything along that's being focused specifically in that area, or?
Actually, that's being done by the private sector, and I think as the demand grows and as technology develops, you see a number of companies in Hawaii looking at a variety of different, as you know, PV, the solar is big, but also new wind turbines. You know, we see the big giant wind turbines that, you know, people say are ugly, so there are new technologies being developed looking at different designs of wind turbines. There's a lot of biodiesel being created. We have a company that is one of our clients out of Maui, Pacific Biodiesel, that's been going and creating different plants around the country, setting up biodiesel plants, and then we have other companies doing very similar work. There's a lot of work in, now I can't think of what it's called, but using enzymes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, that one, yeah, and the name is
The biocatalyst, I believe, or something.
Yeah,
along those
yeah,
lines,
yeah. So using enzymes to create new fuels. So lots of different and then I think that will actually come into play as fuel gets more expensive.
Well, and also being in an island state where you could have, is you just pick up the, you know, the iPad and look what's going on in the Middle East. All it takes is one event, one thing, and then boom, you could literally be stranded. So, I mean, when you companies come, I mean, okay, company comes to you, you know, or like saying, hey, we need help or assistance. Is it, you know, when you meet with them, do you try to align them upon what they're doing, or do you just try to give them the basic, you know, types of opportunities, skills, things for any company to grow? In other words, you know, it's not like, well, you're doing renewable energy, so these are the areas and companies should be working with, or you may be doing that, you may be doing something else, but these are the tools as a technology company that could be helpful to succeed.
Yeah, so it varies depending on the company. So if it's a real early stage startup company, we actually mentor them more and helping to give them advice and teaching them how to grow their company. Others that might be more mature may need help with marketing, so we may be able to refer them to the right organization to help them with that particular issue. So it all depends, and then of course, you know, we have our incubator in Manoa, so we actually have facility space for companies to come in either as a virtual tenant who will still get all the benefits, but they don't have the actual space, to companies who actually have employees that need space to develop their product.
The Manoa Innovation Center, how long have you been up there for, and how many companies do you have in the Manoa Innovation Center right now?
Been in there, I think, since the mid-90s. I believe we've been there. And we have currently 35 companies actually housed in this center. And then we have about maybe 35 or 40 virtual clients that come in, and they can use our conference room, the copier, they get mail facilities, things like that.
Is there any tension, though? I mean, you're on the University of Hawaii campus, and they have their own technological efforts going on with IP commercialization through, you know, Pictor and the other entities up there. Is there any type of, I guess, you know, what's the word I'm trying to look for, a jurisdictional rub that occurs, perhaps because the university is pursuing its own efforts? Do you think that in the long range of things that there might be a better venue for activities like in the Manoa Innovation Center? I mean, it seems to me that the growth there is limited because the area is already constrained in there, right? You can't really expand it or anything.
Right.
So I mean, especially since you see the new urbanization happening down in Kaka'ako and other areas, is there a plan or consideration by your entity in the long term to look for another place, and what kind of challenges are you having, if any, up at the Manoa Innovation Center?
So the Manoa Innovation it's really served its purpose over the years, but the technology community has grown and changed. So we need to move with that change. So at Manoa, we have very stable companies, technology companies developing products, but we need to be more innovative. And so last year we were seeking funding for a new building down in Kaka'ako, because that's where all the innovation is happening, all the young companies and tech companies are emerging. So we feel we would better suit our clientele down in Kaka'ako. I mean, we still work with the university, and we want to work to help them commercialize their technologies, because that's part of what we do. But it's time for us to have a new space.
Great, and you know, this area, Kaka'ako, is more conducive to a campus type environment, right?
Right.
And then you're a bit closer to downtown, so therefore you can walk back and forth. People are having interactions and projects start to pop up left and right, as opposed to, you know, Manoa's great, but you're up in the university enclave. You're not going to have a chance to network with other companies or entities, right? So this seems to be a better fit for you know, for a technology development area.
Completely. Right? Actually, if we were in Kaka'ako next to Jabson, because we're looking at a plot of land near Jabson and the Cancer Center, it would help us expand our clients to include biotech companies, because they could come in, use our office space, and then go next door and use the lab space there. So that's one way we can increase and help biotech grow in the state, by being able to offer that service.
Yeah, you have the nexus right next to the campus for the lab space and everything. And then there's the possibility of other private partners perhaps coming in at a later date, perhaps a larger pharmaceutical company or something along those lines, to be able to tie into both efforts. When you look at the Kaka'ako area, you know, as a part of a campus or tech thing, was there any effort to try to create, you know, like for instance, high gigabit speed internet connection, some type of pipe, so that you as a tech business would be very attracted in going into that area?
Yeah, so that was the whole plan, is we were going to be sort of the focal point to bring in this 10 gigawatt internet connection. Because right now, that's one of the things we're lacking. At the Manoa Innovation Center where we are, companies come here because we do offer high-speed internet connectivity. But down in Kaka'ako was going to be the sort of launch point to bring that in. And unfortunately, it didn't pass in the legislature last year. So that was a real loss for the entire tech community.
Because that was going to be a 10 gigabit upload, I mean, which is a big pipe. I mean, you could do digital animation, post-production, a lot of things there. I mean, it's a venue for the entertainment industry and such. Why do you think that it, you know, I guess the funding failed? Do you think it was the fact that policymakers and the public didn't understand the importance? Do you think that, you know, that because of Kaka'ako, other things that are going on there, the controversy followed its way there? I mean, what would you, I guess, the postmortem, if you will, for the fund?
You know, I don't really know.
You can't say the CPC turned
I don't, you know, I wish I understood that. And probably that people don't understand the importance of it and why we need the funding for that. You know, Hawaii is not going to be able to grow. You know, we're in the middle of nowhere, you know, essentially. So that ability to connect to all other areas outside of Hawaii is critical. And we can't do business effectively if we don't have that connection. And I just don't think people really understood that.
Well, that's true, but you also, you know, you also did unfortunately have the other issues with Kaka'ako going on at the same time, and you know, as you know, that Kuki Square building where everybody's view gets narrowed down, very focal. They hear Kaka'ako, they don't know it's 10 gigabit, they don't know about tech. Do you think that that's something like moving into next year, you know, after the dust has settled from the election process and new people are coming in, that to go out and educate them and the public as to why this tech park in Kaka'ako is important, why this 10 gigabit is important? Is that part of your?
Yeah, I think that's part of our agenda for the year, is to really get people behind it. And even going into Kaka'ako, our building is small. It's not like this big skyscraper that people are expecting, you know, it's going to block our view or anything. But we're really there to build the business community, not just in Kaka'ako, but for the whole state. And so we need to go out and really make people aware of what our agenda is and what we're trying to accomplish. Because it's already growing. So there are 2 co-working spaces down in Kaka'ako already, bringing the tech companies in, But once they're done with co-working, they need an incubator to really grow and thrive.
Yeah, and then to have that type of digital infrastructure is huge too.
Yeah.
But also you're creating a clean economic engine within the Kaka'ako area for many of the young professionals who will probably be living at these developments right there. So, I mean, was that something that you try to bring forward to the community to say, hey, when you want jobs, these aren't the traditional jobs that you used to see in the area, with cars and machinery. This is clean, high-tech job.
And high paying.
And high paying.
And high paying, that's the other thing. And, I hear so much from parents saying, I'm worried because my child's going to go to school and they're going to have to leave because there's no jobs here. But we have the jobs for those students. We need to educate the students what those jobs are and train them, in coding, design, and other things that the tech companies need so that we have jobs here. We just need to make people aware that they exist.
When you have these companies come in, do you ever see the flight syndrome occurring where you have companies coming, they build, they grow, they enter the next stage, and then they move to the mainland or someplace else for a wide, variety of transportation and other nexuses? Is that something that you're seeing, and how do you as a strategy go to make sure that these companies keep some kind of presence in Hawaii? Is it that gigabit, that technological connection that can do that, or is there something else to try to incentivize them to stay, instead of just taking off?
Yes. So one way to make them stay is money.
Yes.
So there needs to be, so part of the reasons why companies leave is that most of the investors that put money into technology companies don't live in Hawaii. We have a small investment group here, Hawaii Angels Group, and then there's Bloom, that's a venture capital fund, and some other small funds. But we don't have the critical mass here for Hawaii companies, and a lot of times if you get a big investment, then the investor wants you close by. Yeah. So my goal is to educate people on the West Coast that Hawaii is not that far, and it's much prettier than any place in California.
Nice place
yes,
to do business.
And it's a great place to do business. And it's not, and if you come over from San Francisco or LA, it's a 5-hour plane ride, not that far. You're in a beautiful place. You can do business, so keep your company here. And it's not, and especially now with technology, you can Skype. There are other ways to communicate than forcing the company to move, but that's been the tradition.
Yes.
And so unless we have more venture capital or angel funding, we probably need more angel funding than venture funding because most companies don't qualify.
What was the difference between an angel and a venture fund, just for maybe people in the audience who are...
So angel funding is really for 90% of the companies. They need angel funding because they need maybe $1 million or $2 million at the most to really launch their company to be successful. And that's, venture capitalists usually start at $1 million and go up to $50, $200 million. So there's a very big difference in the funding. Also, what they're looking for in terms of return, size of revenue, those are all different between angels and venture capitalists.
Okay, so I mean, so an angel, to get it straight, is a type of venture capitalist, but one who comes in for a smaller amount of money at the earlier stages of the...
Well, yeah, and angels are usually individuals.
Okay.
That's why they're called angels.
Oh.
So you can go around with a halo on your head.
You saved me, thank God.
Yes, and that's what they do. They save companies. Where venture capitalists are an institution.
Okay.
It's institutional funding run by a board of people, and they make a decision.
Are there any efforts to try to match or get more of the venture institutional funding from the mainland into Hawaii by perhaps matching it with other funds or with state funds?
So in the High Growth Initiative, the one that the Hawaii Strategic Development Corporation manages, that's what they do. They put funding into limited partnerships and other venture funds so that they give Hawaii a first look, so that any companies that we have here can be looked by them.
So what's the difference between the Strategic Development Corp and the High Technology Development Corp? Do you get that type of confusion at all?
What is the interplay? They're the ones that really have the investment money. And we're the more traditional economic development where we do the hand-holding of the companies, the deep-down mentoring, and really providing a service to grow organically the companies. So that's, I would say, the main difference.
Between you and the strategic
Yeah.
development. But there is definitely a connection or working
Oh, of
relationship.
course,
But
of
you-
course, yeah, because our companies need their money.
Yes.
And they're interested in making sure our companies succeed. And we also do joint projects together. So we work together.
Okay,
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah.
We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, but we'll be right back to talk more about technology, economic development in Hawaii, and crowdfunding. Could it be a future source for funding our economic future? We'll be right back.
I'm Jay Fidel. That's Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And every Wednesday we have Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. We've been doing it for some time now, and we have some fantastic guests on there, unbelievable guests who give us insight into what is going on in a very complex, sometimes very confusing, sometimes very disappointing area of progress in the state. So we love doing this. We love meeting them. We love talking to them. We love having their ideas out on the table. So maybe, just maybe, we can all make some sense of what's going on. Sharon, what do you think?
I think that's absolutely correct. We enjoy ourselves meeting with all these people and hearing about the energy and the state of clean energy, and hopefully we advance clean energy for the state. So it's terrific. Join us. Come
Okay,
join
it's
us.
every Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is Energy Day. Every
Energy
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
4 to 5 p.m. Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, here on Think Tech Hawaii.
Energy
We'll see you
Wednesday.
there.
Aloha, welcome back to Facing Our Future. I'm your host, Angus McKelvey, and today we're talking about the technology economy in Hawaii. Specifically, how can we as a state and a people take advantage of the new technologies emerging around the world and within our own backyard to create an economic future of opportunity for all of our citizens. And again, joined here with Robbie. Thanks so much. High Technology
Thank
Development
you.
Corporation
Thank you.
for now. Before we took our break, well, when we took our break, we kind of touched upon crowdfunding. You know, this phenomenon. Maybe briefly, you can kind of give an overview of what crowdfunding is.
Okay.
And how do you like? Not really. What do you like me to do it?
No, yeah. So crowdfunding is a whole new way for companies to get money into their company. You can post, there's so many different ways you can do it. You can, like Kickstarter, where you offer people goods for money, and that's one way to do it. I don't know if the SEC did their ruling yet, because that was
Yeah, I think they're on it right now.
yeah, because that's been a big holdup for investors. Because if you're getting crowdfunded by, you know, hundreds of people, how does that work? If then you go after venture capital, how do you pay all these other
Or
investors off?
how do you know the money coming in is clean? You might have, you know,
Right.
Jose Bolivar's money coming in, you know, I mean, and then what
Right.
happens if that money is in seized in an investigation?
Mhm.
I mean, you're right, where it's coming, and there's also you don't know how much or it's what
Right.
is going to come in. So it's, if you can't, it seems to be, although it seems to be attractive because you could have a flood of people coming in, there's no way, to say,
Yeah.
okay, by this point we should have this much to be able to proceed. You're kind of in the wind.
Right, yeah. That's why some people like the ones where you sell something like a T-shirt or piece of your product to get money in, because then they're getting something in exchange for that money, and then you're done.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're investing, like crowdfunding, and you're getting, you know, a small piece of the pie, you know, that creates too many investors.
And you have the SEC part, you know,
Right,
exactly. Too many
exactly.
investors coming in, too many shares.
Yeah, right.
No valuation
Right.
behind the shares. I mean,
Yeah.
you can see it looking like a real bad monopoly game here. Real soon.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
but it does. I mean, provide I guess an add-on tool or an extra tool for like companies who have lined up, you know, their venture angel funding to kind of bring additional cash in. Is there an opportunity
you
for
were-
that on that level?
Well, if you already had your angels and your VCs lined up, you don't need crowdfunding. This is for people really early out of the gate that are still in their garage, you know, trying to figure it out. Those are the kinds of people. So one of my friends, her son is creating a game.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
so he's crowdfunding his money raised through his website, and he's getting money that way. And I forget if they get a demo of the game or what they get in exchange for it, but that's how he's raising his money.
Oh, excellent. And by using the game as the valuation for the investment
Yeah.
is very simple, very small, very
Right.
concise. Then, so really, crowdfunding then is for that garage special back of napkin stage. You know, when you're very
Right.
tiny, but you wouldn't look at it beyond that because of all the issues we talked about.
Yeah, all the issues, and then also you need bigger chunks of money too, and that's not going to crowdfunding. unless it evolves,
Yes.
which could happen. You never know because there's that Bitcoin program.
Well, that's caused
yeah,
a
that's
whole
another,
other
yeah, no, and that's a whole different conversation, which I
You wanna
still
talk
don't
about
understand.
The economy and artificial inflation and rate of exchange. We can spend
Yeah.
a whole episode on that alone.
Right,
I mean,
right,
But
yeah.
therein, exactly with Bitcoin, the valuation issue is a huge one.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there definitely, while there's a buzz about it, I can see from the
Yeah, and there's positives to doing crowdfunding
Mm-hmm.
to get your company launched. But again, you have to think long term. Where's your company going? How much money do you really need? I think the fall of a lot of companies is they don't think long term of how much money I'm going to need over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
They only think of today.
Yes.
Yes.
Instant gratification.
Right,
syndrome,
right,
Yeah.
right,
Who cares in 5
exactly.
years? I mean, we're just trying to get to next month. And I think you see that. A lot of the small, you're just looking the next month. And sometimes that, prevents or precludes the long-range planning that's needed to
Yeah,
reach your goals.
exactly.
One of the other funding initiatives that's come up in the last year, it didn't make it all the way, but it's probably something to discuss, is called SBIR. What is SBIR, and what does it do, and why is it an important mechanism or an opportunity perhaps for local companies?
Yeah. So the SBIR program is a federally funded program. There are 17 federal agencies that provide small business innovation research grants. It's the only grant out there,
It's the only one left, you mean?
Yeah,
that's still
that you
alive?
don't have to pay back the money.
Well, that makes it more, that's
And
a good grant
so
right there.
the great thing, and it's for people who are creating new products. So there has to be intellectual property involved. It can't just be an app or something like that. It could be software, but the first tranche of money is $100,000. And that's to really vet your technology to make sure it works. And then the second, what they call phase 2, is anywhere from $750,000 to $1 million to help you move that product into the commercialization phase. And then there's what they call phase 3, which actually you then take the product to the market. However, they don't give you money for phase 3. They just say, oh, you won phase 3.
You won
So
phase 3, we're not
but
going to give you money. Good luck to you.
So our organization, HTDC, we actually have a matching fund. So if you get a phase 1 SBR grant, we can match up to 50% of the money you got. So then instead of getting, $100,000, you have $150,000 to develop your technology, and you can use our funding for things that you can't use the federal funding for, such as marketing.
The commercial aspects,
people.
beyond the limitations of the federal one.
Right,
Which is-
exactly.
Which companies need. I mean, that's kind of that flexibility that they need right
Right.
there. So this program, though, did not make it last year.
Right,
Is there
right.
going to be an effort next year or next session to look at this again?
Oh,
and to
certainly.
try to push that fact that you do have the flexibility with the state match in there?
Right. So our statute mandates we can do phase 1 only. So we need to pass legislation and get funding to do support phase 2 and phase 3, because the problem with all companies, once you get to the commercialization phase, you need a lot of money. So even though you're maybe getting $750 or $1 million, you need more money to get to the market. And so to help Hawaii companies out, it's critical that they get some additional funding, and that's one way that HTDC can help companies, and also with phase 3.
Phase 3 now, but under phase 3, there is just an award. There's no money given. So under this bill, phase 3 is out of the statute. There could conceivably be some state funds offered.
Right.
To phase 3.
So
This is-
so in order for us to create matching, one of my ideas is to have the entity that wins phase 3 get a joint venture with another company or a private investor, and we would match 50% up to a certain dollar amount.
Oh, okay.
Of that.
So you still, that's a good thing, because you're bringing in more additional private capital. It's not just, okay, you're phase 3, we're going to match. something
Right.
that doesn't
You need to
exist.
have some other matching funding coming in.
See that, and SBIR appears to be, like you said, aimed towards technology innovation, this intellectual property. Do you think that's something, especially in the defense space, where Hawaii has lost defense spending because of, lost Senator Noy? Do you think SBIR creates an opportunity for some of these more defense-oriented technologies being developed in Hawaii to take off and then thereby bring more federal support back into Hawaii?
Well, actually, SBR program, as I said, are in 17 federal agencies. And one of my areas is not just defense, because that's kind of common here, is agriculture.
Really?
So in agriculture, USDA has an SBIR program, and HDDC has a partnership with USDA so that we have access to all the scientists within USDA that are growing and creating new technologies. So if we can match our farmers to those technologies, there's SBIR money to the farmers.
Is there any effort going on right now to match the farmers with working with the Farm Bureau or others?
Yeah,
perhaps?
so we're actually working on that. We're creating an agriculture forum here in Oahu. That'll be this fall. We're doing that with the City and County Honolulu Farm Bureau and the University Extension Program to bring the farmers in. And then what we plan to do is hear their issues. And then once we do, then we can go out and figure out what are the solutions and bring the people together. And then from that, if there's anything within USDA that we can also bring in, that's when we can create a agreement with them and then pursue funding through USDA.
Yeah, so it brings up a situation which happened with farming and technology in Australia, where they had farmers who were watering and very inefficiently all the time. The rain or shine, the sprinklers came on, and they put in these little devices instead along the rows of plants, and they would go to the cell phones, and so they would know exactly, okay, this plant needs water, that plant needs water, this doesn't, this doesn't, this doesn't. So they're able to spot water, and all of a sudden reducing the water use majorly and bringing crop efficiency up big time. So although that's an example to that area, is that the type of message you're trying to bring to the farmers? Like, these are the tools, technologies to make you more successful?
Exactly. Because USDA has been doing a lot of research in those areas. So if we can bring that to the farmers and the farmers use it as a test trial to help USDA, that's where the funding comes in.
Well, you get the kids excited too.
Yeah, and the kids will be excited about it. And it's not just agriculture, defense, there's energy. The Department of Energy, they have mega grants.
Really?
Yeah.
Are there any areas that you're like mega? Are there any areas of energy that these grants have either trended or focused in on? It's like, for instance, I know renewables hot, but
renewables hot. Biojet fuel. So there's a big effort within DOE and USDA to create biojet fuels because that's a big consumer of fuel. So they're looking at putting big money into that as well. National Science Foundation surprisingly has lots of different kinds of grants. And companies, they're all SBIR grants, but a lot of people would never think to go to look at National Science Foundation for SBIR grants.
So that's, if we were to get this thing going, then that's one of the areas where your group can step in and basically say, hey, these are the areas where these grants exist that you can go
Exactly. We do a SBIR conference every 2 years. And we bring in all the program managers from Washington, D.C. to Hawaii to talk about their programs, what they're looking for. There are also solicitations that come out, so we're going to do a better job of marketing so that companies know what they can apply for, and then we'll have people help them write the grants.
See, that's a key point right there, is the grant writing, because, from my brush, with people who deal with federal grants, there's a lot of paperwork and deadlines and record keeping involved, and if you miss those or they don't come together and they don't have everything, you could lose the grant money or have it pulled back. So it's important then when you work with them so that they know the process and what's required of them, right?
Right, yeah. We have a grant writing workshop to teach people, because if you miss the margins or the wrong font, they just throw it out.
Well, there's also one other thing I heard a story of, is that, they were one group was putting in, qualifying costs, and all of a sudden they're being told, oh, by the way, the cost for this position or what this person was doing can't be qualified. And now all of a sudden you've made these type of, projections and expenditure for a needed, workforce, project going on. All of a sudden it's like, oh, well, that doesn't qualify. So really, for these companies in SBIR having the high tech, or should I say Hawaii technologically?
Yes,
let's
I
get
like
the new
that
name
name better.
going right here. Is that right, Jay? We'll sell it now. So
yeah.
But that would be really one of the values of having, in the 21st century, to work with these companies. These grants are available. This is the process you go through. Here are the writers who will help you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we'd love to get some additional funding programs to provide technical assistance to our clients and to clients. And one of the programs we're doing now is we're extending our reach into the neighbor islands. So we will now have business mentors on Big Island, on Maui, and on Kauai eventually.
Excellent.
And so we want to do that. And when you're talking about positions, one of the other things we need to be able to handle all these programs is we do need to get our positions filled.
Excellent. Well, on that note, positions being filled, expanding to the neighbor islands, is technology ready to expand in the neighbor islands? Will the Technology Development Corp lead us in that effort, or our efforts go far beyond our island chain? We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hello, I'm Martin Despang, and I'm the host together with the one and only Ali Amashta, and our show is called Urban Transcendence. And Urban Transcendence is about identifying where we have a unique situation of a vibrant city in one of the most beautiful natural environments. So how these two can coincide, sometimes conflict, how they could find reciprocity in the 21st century is what we're excited about. And we're planning on bringing in a diverse body of guests, both from the arts and the science and the established and the wise and the emerging generation. So hope you will join us. We'll always be on Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Thank you.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Facing Our Future. I'm your host, Angus McKelvey, and as we always do in this show, quite exciting conversation off camera. We were talking about federal grants in general, and the limitations and expectations of them. As a business, you need flexibility. You need to be able to deploy, your money in various areas. Do these grants, are they very rigid? Do they often present problems for companies who are trying to remain flexible, or do you think it's more of companies understanding what is required up front? Is that really the key?
Yeah, I think it's really companies understanding what's required in the budget. I mean, it's pretty detailed in the solicitation what's allowable for expenditures. I mean, it's unfortunate though that there are things like marketing that you can't spend the money for. And so things like that, or I can't think of some other, but it's clearly outlined what you can and can't spend the money for, which is why our funding is really important, because then they can use our funding to support those areas that they can't support with a grant.
And that's really critical, because you need those extra monies and be able to have the flexibility, especially in marketing, to get out your message. I mean, if nobody knows about the Better Mousetrap, you might as well not have the Better Mousetrap.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, with marketing is key. When you do marketing, when you work with companies on marketing, I'm assuming it's a big segment, do you try to match them with other professional companies who engage in that? Is it more of trying to find people with those fields that perhaps would? I mean, how do you match them up, or is it just depending on the size of company and situation?
Well, because we're a state agency, we can't really match them specifically to a certain company. But what we can do is we have a list of resources, and we can, give them like 4 suggestions, and then it's up to them to follow through on the suggested resources.
So you give them a list of, these are the entities or places that provide the services.
that we think would be best for you.
Now, do you vet these resources out? I mean, are these all entities that you've worked with, and done successful things before?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a good value then for another reason why a company working with you
and
gets
so,
a strategic advantage.
Yeah, and of course in marketing consulting companies, we're looking for them because we need them to help support our companies.
Economic development, especially technology economic development, has been the focal point of many states. And do you have competition, or is there, do you see, like when you go out to the mainland and other places, other states are doing the same thing, and they're being aggressively trying to either court companies to come from Hawaii or create new types of economic gardening? I mean, what is the competition like between the states and regions in this area of economic development?
So mostly it's pretty congenial. So people say, well, this is what we did. They don't see it as competent, especially because we're not in their backyard. So if your states right next to each other, there's a little more. So when I was at the Bio International Convention in San Diego a few weeks ago, I met a guy who worked for Arizona, but he was stationed in San Diego to recruit companies from San Diego to Arizona. And Arizona, in their booth, had a list of like 10 different tax incentives for companies to come to Arizona. I'm like, well, if I saw that, I might consider going to Arizona. And we need to create programs that would incentivize people to come to Hawaii.
So Okay, yeah, and that's definitely a good point. We talk about tax incentives. There were some tax incentives, many years ago that they were repealed because they were, in hindsight, because the way they were being applied and used wasn't the way it was intended. But since then, you haven't seen any type of tax incentive or any type of incentive to bring companies or businesses in there. Do you think next year, especially if the economy strengthens and all the other stuff aside, do you think that next year you would like to see a discussion in this area?
So I would like to see more funding resources. For instance, our program to create funding for the SBIR program, and we would like to create another type of fund that would be a commercialization fund to help companies beyond SBIR, because tax incentives, they're okay, but for most companies that are startup, they don't have any taxes to report because they're not generating revenue. So it's really not, a good program for them unless, as companies mature, what they had in the state of Maryland was where you could sell your tax credits.
Yes, they were called the name of transferable.
Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
yes.
exactly. You could do that, and that's a type of program.
But there's also, there was concern about the transferability aspect because companies who do not have any benefit or, are buying this, so it's not going to where it's intended. The money is being circuitously now coming to the company. Do you think, given that perhaps, I guess, that a grant or match model would be better for incentivization program?
Yeah, so I came from the state of Maryland, and the entity I was in, we had 4 different funds for companies to get funding. And then not only did we have funding, but there were 3 other entities that were state organizations that had funding. And so with all those different pies to go to, that was a draw. A lot of people moved from Virginia into Maryland just to take advantage of the potential. That wasn't a guarantee you got the money, but it was the potential to get the funding.
So maybe that could be one of the ways to look at is the funding side. If you're an institutional funder, if you put into this fund program or state program, you would get the tax incentives or benefits.
Right.
Then you could create this critical mass of investment, of fund investment, which is earlier in our discussion one of the big things that's needed out here in Hawaii.
Right.
And because then policymakers are a little bit more comfortable because you don't have what they call a runaway tax credit or a tax credit that can't be used.
Right, exactly.
As we've heard from the Blue Crush thing that happened many years ago, or one entity takes all of it.
Right, yeah, and the one advantage of our funding in Maryland is that there was a payback. So that there was either a royalty payback or it was a convertible note, so that you didn't pay it back right away like a conventional loan, but once you made money, then you started to pay it
To
back.
me, the royalty model seems the most intriguing. I mean, they call it the Stanford Google model too. You kind of, it's like, okay, we'll invest you. We're not going to expect the money back as a loan payment or anything else, except as contingency. If you hit it big, then we'll get this stream of profitability from it.
Right.
They do that in film in the Isle of Man too. They have the film program. You go into the place, you film it there. They'll fund everything, but the only catch is if you put it out there, and it makes money. They get the copyright for all the European distribution. So I mean,
yeah, it's very similar. Or we also had the opportunity to take equity too. If we thought that it was going to be a home run, we can convert it to equity.
Yeah, exactly.
Money
You
that
get a good
way.
exactly. There's a lot of potential home run things out there, especially with things that come up, in society in the news. The chance to be able to grab that type of. Do you think under this program then it also provides the quickness that's needed?
Right. So in our time frame, it's like three to 4 months to get funding. Whereas if you're seeking angel or venture funding, it's anywhere 12 months to 18 months to get funding.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and by then you're going to be,
Well, especially when you have
sandbox.
these new spaces, these new blue oceans that open up. Where if you don't get in that field quickly, if the company can't make that jump, then that space will be taken by another player, another entity,
Right.
one from offshore, overseas. So yeah, having that really allows these local companies then to take advantage of this blue space when it opens up.
Right.
Well, that's critical in getting them here and having them stay here.
Exactly, and that's the condition of the money. Is if you get this funding, you have to stay at least 5 years.
See, that's a very important point.
And if you move out, then you pay us back immediately, plus with interest.
See, now that's great because that is the mechanism to keep them, like we discussed earlier, from when they grow to a certain stage and they're gone, they're out of here. You know, and that, well, that's great if you do that, but there's going to be a penalty for that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because it's our money. We helped you in the critical time of your development. And so we should be rewarded for helping you at that time.
Yeah, and you should, hopefully stay in an area where you matriculated and will be able to become what you become because of, the investment that the state has made in there. Do you see, with other business sectors beyond technology, is there an interest in partnering with technology companies now? Do you find a demand from outside companies, from visitor industry or whatever space coming in to say, okay, we want to look at these companies to help solve a solution or problem? Do you ever get any kind of...
So actually, the tech industry themselves are actually going into these non-conventional tech areas. So like in the retail space, there's a group already forming to help retailers utilize technology to operate better, to create more money. One of the other areas, which is auto body and auto repair shops, they're the least tech savvy, they're still, yeah. And so technology is really, and that's why we say we want to change our name, because technology is morphing into everything.
Everything we do
Yeah,
see.
I mean, your car is technology.
You can get your car towed with technology.
The comfort sleep bed is technology.
Yeah, they have beds now that if you have a relative who's sick or infirm, can send you signals, your phone, let you know, text messages. You're right. Technology's in everything we do. But do you think, since technology's in everything we do, when these companies come to you, do you look to see, like, for instance, if a company's in a certain space, try to create strategic opportunities, like beyond the list of support? Like, for instance, you have a company who's into healthcare, and they want to go into the healthcare space. Do you, like, put them in touch with the insurance companies, the hospital, other groups or businesses that may benefit from what they're trying to do?
Yeah, depending on where they are, too, because if they're really early, you don't want to introduce them too early. I had a company once that had created this device for utility companies. And so I introduced them to the utility company and just said, would you use this technology? And they said, no, we wouldn't. But it was a good, lesson for him that you really need to talk to the customer first. So there's this whole new program called, I forget what it's called, but you talk to 100 customers before you even start your company.
See, that is a really good thing. The due diligence is required when you take a product to know what your customer base is, what they're expecting. And also, when you move into these areas, there's also, your 2 cents is greatly appreciated here. You would also want to look at what problems, emissions, or unforeseen circumstances may emerge, right?
Right. You look at all the different risks that are involved, and because a lot of times people develop products without ever contacting their customer. And they're the ones not successful, where the ones that have worked with the customers from day one are very successful.
So even though, like, you got a hot idea, it's in the news, but if you don't have that customer, that due diligence, even though the product may be, quote, timely and everything else, it could miss big time because there could be an error omission, or the customer may not understand how it works, or may be no value in it to them.
Right, so, yeah. Or, some technology is just ahead of its time. Some people are such amazing thinkers that it's the market isn't ready for them yet.
Yes, I have one of those of my own, but I won't share it here. But you're right, you have the people who are ahead of their time. Do you see that? I mean, have you ever had some of the companies come and like, this is an incredible idea, but your market research and everything, it may not be the time yet. You may need to work on this more. You may need to kind of educate and do more customer research?
Well, I had a company that developed 3D imaging for surgery. And this was back in the mid-90s, before 3D was even around. And people kept poo-pooing him and saying, it can't be done. And he kept saying, no, I've got it done. And it just wasn't, his time. But now, it's his time because everybody does 3D.
And now, well, before I could see a challenge with 3D imaging. You have high data. Back then you had bandwidth challenges and you had challenges. Now you have high speed, you have storage of digital devices, and now telehealth and medicine, which is being funded and pursued. So his time has come, so to
Yeah,
speak.
right,
you
right,
know.
exactly.
But the main thing was he kept at it.
Yeah, he kept at it. He didn't give up because he was sure that this was, and he worked with doctors to help him develop it to make sure it worked.
And he was constantly evolving it through the feedback he was getting.
Yes,
right?
yeah, that's critical too.
Very much so. Well, do you often see that, like, company, for instance, will start in going towards one space, like, say, creating a medical device, it has to be certified, but all of a sudden a new space like consumer will open up. Do you ever see that happening with the companies?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, a lot of time. And what's good about it is when people are flexible and they know how to pivot because they go, oh, I was going this direction, but I really need to go that direction because the market's bigger and I can get there faster, make money, and then I'll go off and do this other thing. And so that happens.
So that's where a
quite
pivot
bit.
is good. So you've had that consumer thing, you know, for instance, something you can get on a cell phone quickly, consumers like it, something that will do well, they'll pay out of pocket because there's a
Right.
need. You can then guide them into that space, take advantage, make money, and then go back to the medical device institutional side, right?
Right, right. And you see that a lot in people who are developing medical, either devices or vaccines or therapies, because that's such a long road, they need another way to create funding in order to go in that other direction.
Definitely. So and that's where, you know, again, your entity, the Development Corp, I think offers great value. And being able to point this out and match people and expertise to help them take advantage of it, right?
Exactly.
Because you may need a pivot split. You may be like, okay, we got this incredible consumer opportunity, but we need to keep moving this way. So we need to be able to find qualified people to handle both areas to keep them moving.
Well, if you're a startup company, we have you choose one way. You can't do both because you're too divided. You become schizophrenic because you're going into
Sounds like the legislature.
exactly. So you really need to develop one because it's so much energy to develop just a single product, unless you have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And somebody's giving you a lot of money and you have staff to do both. It's more important that you get one right the first time and then go off and do these other things.
So focus.
Right,
focus.
right,
Excellent.
right.
Wow. Well, it's been an incredible discussion with you today on the technology, innovation, the economy, what companies face, and the way you give them advice, and particularly with the future of grant and grant funding with SBIR. So it seems like we face our future, technology in Hawaii and our economy, resource and opportunities out there, and we do have the entities who can make companies succeed. Companies that want to stay in Hawaii and provide the future that all of us want here in the great state. Aloha, have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday with another episode of Facing Our Future.